Roboute Guilliman, Lord Regent of the Imperium of Man, 13th son of the Emperor of Mankind, the Avenging Son, Primarch of the Ultramarines Legion, Lord of Ultramar, is making a huge mistake, and one that will cost humanity dearly. Guilliman is so focused on chaos and fighting the ruinous powers that he's failed to keep his eye on the ball when it comes to xenos. The Tyranids are threatening to eat the entire galaxy, the Necrons are awakening at an unprecedented rate, the Silent King has even returned, the Orks aren't going anywhere and are spreading like the fungus they are, but there is one xenos threat that is far more sinister than any other in the galaxy, and Roboute Guilliman is not only completely ignoring logic and working with them, but is convinced that their precognition is correct, and their vision for the future is true, that the only way humanity survives is alongside and with the help of their own race. The Aeldari. Sure, we know the space robot zombies and liches of the Necron Empire are certainly a huge threat, especially after the ultimatum the Silent King issued to Guilliman. And we know that humanity could be hard-pressed to fend off the Tyranids. But Guilliman has literally let the Eldar into his inner circle, and has even divulged some of the Imperium's most secret plans and strategies to them, all while openly declaring they as a species are untrustworthy. The Lord Regent is convinced that the Imperium's survival is intertwined with that of the Eldar races. He's convinced that both of their species are facing extinction and must work together, going so far as to openly talk about a future where the two races have rid the galaxy of foes and coexist side by side in peace and prosperity. But what Bobby G forgets is that this is the grim darkness of the far future, not some Star Trek hippie love-in. Nobody's wearing pajamas and getting it on with genderless aliens in some space commie utopia here. These aliens will backstab our entire species to save a single member of their own if that's what suits them. And it comes down to Guilliman having his old relationship, dating back to the Great Crusade, with Eldrad. Probably the strongest psyker in the galaxy, maybe that ever lived, next to the Emperor, of course. Guilliman may just have been under the influence of the Xenos and their witchcraft for too long. After all, without Eldrad as well as the Inari of Rain, Eniad, Guilliman wouldn't be here now. He'd still be in his state of undeath, stuck in stasis. So perhaps Guilliman is compelled by a feeling of debt, since he owes his life to them. But perhaps he was influenced by the armor he was forced to wear to live. Or was he? For when confronted directly, Eldrad dodged a direct response. It may have been the case that Guilliman was only led to believe he needed that armor to sustain him. Either way, he was encased in the armor of fate for quite a while without even a moment outside of it. And with the new Dawn of Fire book, The Silent King, we get the most recent events in the string of events involving the Eldar embedding themselves within Guilliman's inner circle. Guilliman has gone full Xeno simp, and exclaims to the Eldar ambassador to his court on behalf of Eldrad, the Farseer Ilian Natase, that he wishes the Eldari people to prosper, endure, and exist alongside humanity as they are an elegant, artistic, gifted people who have an amazing culture, etc. And by the time we get to that, I realized Guilliman had gone too far. Whether he knows it or not, he's been reeled in by these space elves and used to their ends, not his own. Let's start with the first time the Farseer meets the Primarch and see how the stage is set. Guilliman has reached out to Eldrad based on what his librarians are telling him. He should talk to the Eldar as they have a common cause. And Eldrad plays right into that, just completely shining Guilliman on and dispatching Natase to represent him and the Aeldari at the Primarch's court from Gate of Bones. "My lords and ladies," Roboute Guilliman said without preamble, as Fabian had come to expect, "we find ourselves delayed. Some of you are aware of the reasons why. For those of you who are not, I shall now explain. Shortly after leaving Vorlessa, our psychers reported a building disquiet about the coming battle for Gethalamor. These ranged from visions interrupting astropathic communication to repeated identical spreads of the Emperor's tarot observed by the fleet cartomancers. Those who know me well know I do not put much stock in such scryings, but they have been consistent enough that we must assume something is amiss. We have had no messages from the holding force I deployed upon the world. There is, according to our seers, a rising disturbance in the warp occurring around the system that is barring communication. Our prognostications were dire, but imprecise, so I sent for aid. That is why we came out of the warp. The herald of the one I petitioned has arrived." He looked around the room. "The nature of this herald will appall some of you. You will not voice this opinion. You may feel the need to show your loyalty to the Emperor by displaying aggression. You will not. You will receive this emissary with cordiality, and you will listen to what he has to say with respect. He and his people are not to be harmed while they are here. Any man or woman who takes it upon themselves to act against our guests will be found out, and they will answer to me." He asked for no understanding, but looked around the room again, silently conveying his sincerity of his threat. "Provost Andaramus, please bring our guest into the chamber Astartes." The sound of a single set of marching feet approached, though two figures emerged into Fabian's view. The first was a high-ranking judge of the Adeptus Arbites, resplendent in white armor. The second, Fabian took for a man, though only for an instant. It had a humanoid shape, 2 arms, legs, and a head. Its body was proportioned similarly to a human being's, but not the same. It was too thin, too elegant, but beyond its form, its manner of movement gave it away. No man or woman walked so precisely. Then there was the smell, spicy and sweet, faint and not unpleasant, but the revelation it brought made Fabian recoil. "Xenos," he said. "Xenos." It whispered around the chamber. Colquhoun tensed, even he unable to disguise his shock. He didn't know, thought Fabian. The alien's gear was outlandish. A tall helm with a curved, forward-pointed crest, huge eye lenses of deep green reminiscent of an insect or deep-dwelling fish. It wore a dull gem upon its front, as big as Fabian's fist, carried a tall staff topped with a geometric symbol and set with another gem, this one shifting with treacherous light. At its waist was a bizarre gun, and a slender power sword. Whispers hissed around the gathering. "You will be silent," Guilliman said, and the voices dropped, though the tension remained thick. The xenos stopped before the throne and performed a complex series of gestures with its hands. It bowed, and then, to gasps all around, it dared to make the holy sign of the Aquila. It reached up and unclasped the front of its strange helm. Its gorget shrank back into the high collar of its robes. Fabian could not see its face yet, but had an impression of a long skull, pointed ears of near-translucent flesh, and a high topknot of black hair as fine as silk. "My greetings to you, Lord Guilliman, son of the anathema, humanity's hope, my people's hope, our ally, our friend. Eldrad Ulthran sends his greetings to you, his old and valued friend." It got down on one knee. This was done stiffly, unlike all its other movements, as if the alien had to force itself to kneel. "You are well received, Farseer," said Guilliman to the alien. Then he addressed his generals. "Lest any of you believe that this noble guest of ours interferes in the affairs of humanity without cause, let it be said again that I called upon his master and that he comes here knowing of the danger it represents to him. If you cannot look past his heritage, then at least acknowledge his courage and hear his message." "Rise," said Guilliman. The Xenos stood and turned around. For the first time in his life, Fabian looked a member of another intelligent race in the face. "We welcome you, Ileana Natase of Craftworld Ulthwe," Guilliman said. He pronounced the name strangely, speaking like the alien did, and that struck Fabian as grotesque. "Lords and ladies of the Imperium, I greet you in return," said Natase. The sense of loathing that emanated from the audience was palpable, yet the Eldari stood firm in front of it. "This news I bring you, I save for your ears. Even your Primarch, Lord Guilliman, has not yet heard all that has come to pass. Firstly, I tell you that your empire persists on the other side of the rift." A murmur went around the room. "My kind are at war there, as are yours. This—" A Commodore of the Navy shot to his feet. The Aeldari turned his disturbing face towards him. "Lord Guilliman has already confirmed that Imperium Nihilus stands." An unreadable expression flicked across Natase's face. "Then that is ill news." The skein suggested you did not know. Not only do we know, said the Commodore, after the first news we received many messages from the far side of the rift, some of which detail military actions by your people against ours. And I do not speak of just any faction of your perfidious kind, but the black-clad warriors of Ulthwé, shouted the officer. Murderer! Xenos scum! Not only a Xenos, but a Xenos witch! Silence! Boomed Guilliman. His voice was a weapon that slew all complaint. Quiet fell instantly. I told you to hear him out, said Guilliman. Without his master, I would still be trapped in stasis. Do not forget this. He turned to Natase. Perhaps we are not so helpless as your people sometimes believe. Perhaps, said Natase blankly. Though our seers are more skilled than yours, for this reason, you should listen to me, he said. Why should we? Said a voice from the Council Exterra. Luthien Guile, Chiliarch of Rasunian and designated representative of the Lord Commander Militant of the Astra Militarum. Guilliman turned towards him. Because I say you should. Would you defy my command, Lord Guile? But my lord, we cannot trust them, protested Guile. I accept full responsibility for saying this, but someone must speak out. Sweat trickled down from beneath Guile's shako. He shook with the effort of looking the Primarch in the face. Many of us here have fought the Aeldari. I admit that they have been our allies at times in the past, but only when it suited them. Then are you saying that they brought me back only because it suited them? Said Guilliman neutrally. His words covered a dangerous gulf. Guile bravely stepped into it. Yes. It was the Emperor's will that you returned, said Guile. He used them as his instrument, but the Aeldari are not selfless. They did not do it for the sake of humanity. They are cruel and cold and regard us as little better than animals. I know. I have faced them on the battlefield. I have spoken with their leaders. This is the greatest military force the galaxy has seen since the Emperor left Terra and retook the stars. Why do we need them now? You're right, said Guilliman, and though he continued speaking as if he addressed his fellow humans, his words were meant for the Aeldari. I have known Eldred Ulthrin since the days of the Great Crusade. He and I have made common cause more than once, but I do not trust him. I do not trust one of them. We fight to save our species. They fight to save theirs. It's an evolutionary struggle, and in that there can be no true friends. I know that if their prognostications demanded it, they would do all they could to wipe us all out without a second thought. I suspect some members of their nations have tried. He looked at the Farseer. Know, Natase, that although I extend to you full hospitality, and I swear you shall not be harmed while you are here, and that I have great respect for Eldred Ulthrin, I know your kind. Choose your words carefully. Speak truth if you can. Know that although the Lady of Rain and Farseer Ulthrin were instrumental in bringing me back, I will not be manipulated by any of you. Guile is correct. The wrath of humanity is roused like at no other time. We could crush your species, root and branch, if it pleased us. He looked around the room. But it does not please us. For too long, the foes of chaos have been foes of each other, when they should have been allies. Both human and Eldari stand on the precipice of extinction. The galaxy teeters on the brink of annihilation. Now, more than ever, our goals are in accord. That is why these people brought me back, because the Eldari know they cannot win without us. Without mankind, they are doomed, while we need all the aid we can find. Some have likened we Primarchs to weapons, he said. And it may be that the cabal of sorcerers who rule their people thought to employ me as one. But be aware, Eldari, if I am a weapon, I was not one made by your kind. I have a will of my own. He turned around and went back to his throne. There he sat again and raised his hand. Now tell us what you came to tell us. Natase waited as if all this talk were the jabbering of ill-behaved children. Okay, so we see that this guy doesn't care at all about humanity, is only doing what he's ordered to do. This whole alliance is simply between Guilliman and Eldred. Everyone else is unwilling to ally, except they are ordered to. Natase goes on to tell them that the visions of the Farseers have shown them potential disaster at Cathalamor, so Guilliman literally shows the guy the Imperium's game plans. Like, didn't even keep his cards to himself. This guy might be a great logistician, but he's not really the brightest knife in the drawer, if you know what I'm saying. So Guilliman has Colquhoun send an advanced scouting party ahead to find out what is behind all the bad omens. Guilliman really believes that he can make humanity and the Aeldari friends, not just erstwhile allies. That the greater threat of chaos that they should both be fighting instead of one another is going to bring them closer, ultimately. Which is naive. He doesn't understand the patience and cunning of this race. He has severely underestimated the Eldar because they look so human-like, but are more attractive, more refined in form, more fluid of motion, and more complex of thought. This, he forgets. Even his Primarch supercomputer brain is apparently capable of overlooking the plight he puts us in, working with the knife ears. And we know this because in the most candid of moments, Ilia and Natase, as well as Eldred Ulthuan, refuse to be anything but cryptic and enigmatic. The Eldar say just enough to confuse you and also to keep you engaged. Like they took a few lessons from megapastors and other hot air spewing blowhards that don't really say anything but long-winded circular thinking. Just the Eldar are smart enough to make it confusing, so you feel dumb for not understanding them. Spoilers for their whole race, it's all for show. They're just putting you on so you underestimate yourself and overestimate them. That equally applies to the tabletop, by the way. From Godblight, on the nature of gods and belief. Not all gods are evil, said Natase. You are wrong, Donus Maxim, and you speak only of the gods born out of the Immaterium. You neglect the Catan, the Ingir, we called them. They too were gods. He sighed, collected himself as if he were a schoolmaster about to deliver a much simplified lesson to children that would still not understand. You are right when you say that power defines a god, he said. Temporal, spiritual, physical, it matters not. He fell silent for a moment. My people define godhood in several ways, but there are two broad categories. The gods of the other sea, who are reflections of what you call the Materium, and the gods of the Materium itself, who you know as the Catan, though there are other more ancient and even more terrible things than they. The gods of the Materium are an essential part of its fabric. They are able to influence its structure, such as their intimate connection to it, but they are bound nevertheless by the laws of this reality. The gods of the warp are more ephemeral, and more diverse in type. Many are mere concentrations of feeling. Some were once mortals themselves, before the belief of others changed them. The gods of my ancestors were of both sorts, I believe, though this is not the only philosophy propounded by my kind, and I have heard many heated debates on the subject. It is impossible to say now, for our gods were slain when we fell, and even if they could be asked, they would not know the truth of it, for the truth would change anyway as it must, according to the beliefs of those who had faith in them. Yet another kind of agglomeration of souls, of those who were once living, or so say the Inari, whose supposed deity, Ennead, was unleashed by the breaking of Biltan. But who, in truth, can say? One, two, all or more of these things can be true at one moment and may change at another. There are gods that eat gods, gods that are eternal, gods that were but now never were, and gods that come into being only to have existed for all time. The origins of gods are therefore impossible to catalog. They have no histories but the histories people impose upon them. I would agree with your sorcerer here, to an extent. Puissance is the defining aspect of them. A grave expression crossed his face. Faith is another, though this does not apply to all. Some beings do not require faith, but falsehood is not intrinsic to them all. Explain, said Guilliman. The Catan, as far as our legends attest, were essential components of creation. Hungry, evil to mortal eyes, but part of it. They require no belief to live, in the same way the suns they devour require no observer to be. Nor do the great four gods of chaos, who have become so all-powerful they are in essence self-sustaining, though the faith of their followers makes them stronger. Nor does the Great Devourer, the mind of the Tyranids, a being that is generated by the unthinking actions of its physical component parts, and that is perhaps greater than all the rest. Is that a god? Some of our philosophers argue so. Others vehemently disagree. But for other gods, lesser gods, faith is vital. Without faith, they collapse into formlessness, becoming non-sentient vortices of emotion. Unstable, they die. But if the Emperor of the Imperium ceases to believe in the Emperor, he would not vanish, said Guilliman. He has a physical presence even now. He sits upon the throne. By that measure, he is not a god. How can you be so sure? Simply because he existed before he took to his throne. You base your supposition on the idea that he was actually a man to begin with, and that he did not lie. You also suppose that what sits upon the golden throne still has a mortal life, and would persist should his worship cease, said Natase. Did I not say there are gods who were once mortals? These beings become focal points for belief, and belief begets faith. As the pure gods of the warp do, those that are consciousness which emerge from the other sea. The difference is, for gods who were something before they were gods. Natase is just playing with Guilliman. He knows, as do all the Aeldari in the inner circle of knowledge, such as Farseers are, that the primordial Annihilator is the Emperor, that the Dark King and the Annihilator are one and the Emperor is the Dark King. He's talking all this mumbo-jumbo about belief to a guy who was a staunch atheist for millennia, all the while conveniently not mentioning that the primordial Annihilator is the Emperor, that the great enemy that is supposedly to bring mankind and the Eldar together is the Emperor of mankind himself. Natase is in a rather particularly unique position to explain the nature of what they know about the Emperor to the Imperial Regent, but he does not. I mean, Eldred Ulthuan knew that the Cabal was going about it wrong, but he knew they were right in that the primordial Annihilator must be opposed, lest it devour the galaxy like Slaanesh with the Munchies. He knows that what he's pitting Guilliman against, ultimately, and allying with the Knife Ears, is his own father. This is what makes the Eldar the greatest threat. That is an insane level of manipulation. Then there's what Eldred Ulthuan says to Guilliman himself when Guilliman asks about removing the Armor of Fate. There was a windowless tower that nevertheless promised the finest of views, if one only knew how to see them. Beneath the soaring cone of the ceiling, a lithe figure in black armor and a crescent-shaped helm floated cross-legged in mid-air. He was lit by a shaft of light that began nowhere and orbited by an interweaving pattern of spinning runes. Roboute Guilliman met with the one he had called, one of the most powerful beings at large in the galaxy. "Greetings, Eldred Ulthuan, Farseer of the Aeldari," said Guilliman. He spoke in the tongue of Ulthuan's people of Ulthwé. "And to you, son of the Emperor of mankind, my ally and my enemy." "Enemy I sometimes am to your people, and so I am grateful that you have come," said Guilliman. The tower room was well furnished, including a number of chairs. All were far too small for his bulk, and so he remained standing. "I expended a great deal of effort in bringing you back to life," said Ulthuan distantly. His attention was not wholly on the encounter. "I would be foolish not to heed your call if you are to fulfill your purpose. All men require guidance from time to time, and for all your father's art, you are mostly a man." "What is the purpose you have in mind for me?" asked Guilliman. "This is not the question you came to ask, but I'll answer it anyway. The task you must fulfill is the one you appointed yourself, that of the savior of humanity." Ulthuan looked down. "If it would not be offensive to suggest," he said, switching to Imperial Gothic, "I would prefer to conduct this conversation in your language. You're one of the very few sons of Terra who can speak our tongue at all. You do so very well, but there are certain subtleties you do not manage perfectly, and it grates upon my ears." "I apologize for my lack of expertise," said Guilliman. "Not at all," said Ulthuan, staring ahead again. "The fault is yours, of course, but one day you'll master it. Virtually none of your species, no matter how mighty, ever could nor ever will." He caught a rune from the air, examined it, and set it in motion again. The rustle of his robes was loud in the city's immemorial silences. "I can feel your discomfort at this new era," Eldred said. His Gothic was accented in a way that imbued the language with a fresh beauty. I sense your pain. You have a great burden to bear, almost as great as mine. You and I both have seen all we hold dear cast down by folly, and are pained by the misery of what took its place. We're kindred spirits in a way. Ask your question. I will answer, as a favor, in recognition of our shared sorrows. So Guilliman asks if he can take his armor off, and Eldred Ulthuan is not very straightforward. He gives his usual Eldar wishy-washy answer of maybe, maybe not, which is absolutely typical. But Guilliman can totally take it off. I don't know if he ever really absolutely had to wear it. There's a further thing you have not said. Is there? Asked Guilliman. You wish to be free of the influence of my kind, Eldred said, his voice fading with his body. You see the armor as a jailer holding you hostage to our whims. Know this. The fates of humanity and Aeldari are bound together. Either both species will survive, or neither will. Your Emperor understands this. There are greater enemies than the primordial annihilator. In the times to come, you will see. The struggle is only beginning. The old war returns. Ulthuan was an outline, a shadow. Remember this conversation, and reconsider carefully on the day realization comes, whether you wish to stand alone. Eldred Ulthuan was gone. Guilliman left the unliving city to itself. So yeah, Eldred name-drops the primordial annihilator, but doesn't mention that is what the Eldar call the anathema, the Emperor of Mankind. They know he's the Dark King, and Eldred doesn't even mention it. I wonder when he's going to let Guilliman in on the truth of what it is they're supposed to be jointly opposing, ultimately. But it isn't just with the Emperor that Guilliman is being manipulated by the Eldar. When Eldred said there was something worse than the primordial annihilator, I do believe he meant the Necrons and the Catan. And if he did, then it appears that the Eldar may be just goading the humans and Necrons into a war with one another. I mean, the Silent King literally claims the entirety of humanity as his subjects and tells Guilliman, surrender all of us. But the funny thing is, Guilliman treats the Necrons like he does the Eldar. He treats them as xenos, essentially, not paying attention to how different they are and how vastly unique their eccentricities are. And they don't play the same way. The Necrons are much more straightforward, and don't play intrigue at court with anyone else that isn't a 70-million-year-old metal space lich. From the Dawn of Fire novel, The Silent King. I am regent of the Imperium of Mankind. I speak for my people, we who rule this galaxy. Hipatra laughed. His face did not move, could not, and the sound was all the more grotesque for it. We know of your Imperium. You are primitives who squat upon our worlds and plunder our resources. Your realm is nothing. Compared to the majesty of the Necron Star Empire, you are weak and growing weaker. Your technology is primitive. We see signs of your kind everywhere, yet the worlds you occupy are few in this era. You are a race who has fallen and refuse to acknowledge it. Let it be known that at your peak, you would still have been nothing to us. Be grateful the Silent King is wise and just, or we would have destroyed you immediately without this offer of mercy. Then I assume you have not come here to surrender. Do not mock us, human. State then your terms. Hear this. Zarek, Lord of the Necron race, demands the following. You trespass in the sovereign territories of the Nihilic dynasty, who owe fealty to us. Depart this place immediately. No further attempt to penetrate the contra-empirical nexus shall be made. Any ship or colony found within its bounds shall be destroyed. Return, and your vessels and your warriors shall be destroyed. What of the people who inhabited worlds in this sector? They are our property. They shall remain so in recompense for your actions. The remainder will be permitted to live. As allies, then, of the great and powerful Necron people, we have no need of allies. As friends, said Guilliman, neither friends nor allies, but supplicants. Your populations and your materials shall be tithed. Go now, and we shall make arrangements to receive an embassy from you at a time to be determined, with which we shall negotiate the surrender and subjugation of the Imperium of Man to the Necron Star Empire. A sense of palpable outrage settled in the chamber. No person spoke. And later in that story, Guilliman turns arrogance on its head and outdoes the Aeldari. The Primarch's pet xenos, Ilyana Natase, stood several yards down the way, next to an open side door with 3 warriors of the dire Avenger aspect, standing as if they had been watching all along. "Throne," hissed Sicarius. "I warned you this would happen," said the Farseer. "I warned you and you did not listen." "I did listen," said Guilliman. "I pay attention to what you say more than you will ever believe. Everything I hear, I account for in my theoreticals. Theoretical. You warned me. Your master does not want me dead. If I do not listen, you will work to ensure that does not happen. Practical. You have done something about this situation. A contingency." "How very arrogant," Natase said. "How very human. Nevertheless, I assume you have come to offer me an alternative route off this ship?" Sicarius looked sideways at his Genesire. Had Guilliman known this would happen? Natase bowed his head. "I do. A ship approaches. My people answer the call. They reach across the space between the Sea of Souls and the World of Dust, singing away towards us. If we are quick, we might take it." "Then lead on, Farseer," said Guilliman, "and further cement the bonds between our peoples." This is going to lead to a situation where humanity is used to protect the Eldar from the Necrons. We're just a buffer to the space cells that they can throw in between themselves and the Necrons. If anyone in the whole galaxy truly understands the magnitude of the Necron threat, then it would be the Eldar. Guilliman is testing their loyalty to him, and getting the same feedback. Their loyalty is only to their vision, which they feel requires him to live, to lead humanity, because it is through Guilliman leading humanity that the Eldar see their vision achieved. Which brings us up to the current. From Godblight, as Natase is still part of his advisors. Guilliman knew those times were brutal, and believed the methods used extreme. He had privately disapproved of some of what his so-called father had done, though in truth, even the worst atrocity was but what Guilliman himself had performed in Ultramar, writ large. The intent of an act of violence, he thought, was the same, whether a single murder or the destruction of a city resulted. During the Great Crusade, he had wholeheartedly accepted the Emperor's cruelties as a means to an end. And yet, the worlds burned. The civilizations wiped from existence, the alien species driven to extinction, so much death to achieve peace. And then came the heresy, and the truth of what the Emperor had withheld was thrown in his face. Even during the Crusade, Guilliman had wrestled with his conscience. He had argued with his brothers as to the morality of their actions. He had disagreed with some of their methods. Some of them, like the monster curs, he had openly despised. But when he walked these corridors, dripping with ooze and unnatural decay, these spaces that held an atmosphere against the laws of all physics, when he saw what had been done to the domain of the Emperor, what had been done to his own kingdom of Ultramar, then he thought all those methods just. Wherever this ship went now, it would never be greeted with joy. It would never be seen as a liberator or a bringer of safety. Whether its shadow fell across the worlds of mankind or Xenos, it had nothing to offer but cargoes of pain, corruption, disease, and decay. It was catastrophe trapped in a bottle, willfully unleashed. Perhaps nothing should be ruled out in the end. Perhaps no deed was too dark to hold back the horror that chaos brought. There were no ethics, no morals, nothing that could not be sacrificed to preserve the species, to ensure that mankind survived against the odds. Maybe that was what Guilliman had not understood before. He was beginning to think he understood it now, though it burned his soul to accept it. Theoretical. The Emperor had been right, after all, about everything. The Aeldari, the Necrons, the rest of the galaxy's thinking beings, they were worse than men by far. The Aeldari insisted they were more moral, more sophisticated, while half of them manipulated every being they possibly could to ensure the smallest advantage, while the other half cravenly offered the suffering of innocents to save themselves. All of them were equally arrogant. The Necrons took another route, worse in its way, that of a soulless existence. Now they were openly pitted against humanity, a second and terrible enemy. An unexpected war raged around the Pariah Nexus, tying up untold numbers of Guilliman's ships as the Imperium sought to contain the threat. and yet the technology they employed might save them all, according to Belisarius' call. We see Guilliman is introspective, and he's changing his mind about what he's doing. He's starting to see the virtue in what he and his brothers did during the Great Crusade, and the heresy. He's second-guessing his second-guessing of his father's work, and his father's vision, and realizing that the Eldar are not something that we can ultimately coexist with. The implications of what he's realizing will hit him in waves over time, but he's invited space elves into the inner sanctum, and we all know from the Lord of the Rings and Warhammer Fantasy battles that elves and politics mix very poorly, often resulting in genocides, atrocities, extinctions, and the end of ages. Guilliman has allied with beings that only have their own interest at heart, are the most manipulative, psychic things to ever exist, and he's so ignorant of them that he can't even really differentiate between the Asuryani and Drukhari. Guilliman trusted them, and now we're fighting their battles. Anyone that's seen South Park the movie will remember Operation Human Shield, and that's what we are to the Eldar. Operation Human Shield. I mean, do you think Eldrad doesn't know the Necrons are trying to undo the flesh change with a sort of reverse biotransference process? He sure does. And is he going to let a single Eldar get caught up in that, experimented on, turned into a pariah, or even become the host of a newly refleshed Necron tier? Nope. Eldred Ulthuan would let trillions of humans suffer horrific deaths before he let that happen, even to a single one of his people. The Eldar are over the rest of us who inhabit the Milky Way. They cannot be trusted. I mean, literally the Silent King can be trusted more. Though he openly stated that we need to surrender, blanket surrender the entirety of humanity to him or be extincted. The Eldar have just as nefarious plans for us, but are lying about it. The Silent King is at least looking us in the eye and telling us the truth of what he intends to inflict upon us. The Eldar are just way too sneaky and definitely lying. They have 1,000 agendas of their own, and trusting them may have just been the worst mistake Roboute Guilliman ever made. Especially as Guilliman starts to come around and realize that his father's xenophobia was justified, considering extinction of humanity as one of the options on the table as far as what the future holds. They will manipulate, they will lie, and ultimately in the end, the Eldar will betray us. And they won't even think twice about it. As Natase says, we are to them as orcs are to us. They can't stand us. We're animals to most of them, Eldred being a rare exception. And they can't even help but rub it in Guilliman's face and be totally arrogant about it, as seen in the audio drama Hand of Darkness. I have need of allies, Eldred. Evrain went straight as a rod at the presence of a Primarch. Even carried by the crude psychic broadcast of the humans and the filter of Eldred Ulthuan's runes, the nascent majesty of Roboute Guilliman pulsed across the etheric connection, bringing with it another sensation, the cold of death, the stillness of graves. The former seer knew well the touch of Ennead, her master, the Eldari god of the dead and patron of her growing kindred, the Inari. From her time upon the path of the seer, she understood the complexity and power of Eldred's communion. Though it was his mind that directed the power, he acted only as a focus, drawing on the psychic abilities of several other seers. With their thoughts bound through his will, Eldred tapped into the webway, and from that star-spanning network into the eternal matrix. The seers' minds leapt forth into the faltering stream, and rebounding echoes of the psychic beacon the humans called the Astronomicon. By such means were the thoughts and fears and dreams of the human psychers fed by the word and will of Guilliman, and there rendered into something passing for physical communication. We receive your call, and I stand present to address such concerns, as does Evrain. My realm has been plagued, literally, by the machinations of my former brothers. Mortarion, devoted of death and decay, has sought to bring ruin to Ultramar by means both physical and immaterial. I have sensed his sorceries at work, corrupting the skein. Not kindly does Ennead look upon the works of this demon prince. He would steal the souls of the dead, and from them make seeds of damnation for the living. Long steeped in the poison of chaos, Mortarion would see a wasteland of our worlds, long before we can raise Ennead to his glory on a throne of our spirits. Yes, of course. I have witnessed firsthand this devastation, an attack beyond even his means without assistance. You are right, Eldrad. The Mortarion has claimed some artifact to increase his sorceress potency. The Hand of Darkness, you called it, gifted to him by Abaddon to assist in the creation of the Great Rift and the destruction of the Imperium. Long has the Hand of Darkness plucked the strings of the skein to terrible effect. Also, long has it deluded those that would hunt such things and put them beyond use by the forces of the Dark Powers. Harlequins and White Seers alike have failed to recover this ill-omened claw. As have agents of the Emperor, despite terrible sacrifice of great effort. However, theory becomes practice, I think, if you are willing to assist. For the moment, Mortarion's efforts are spent as his forces continue to beset the 500 worlds. The spider has returned to his lair on the plague planet, to spindle webs of corruption and death. Indeed, I believe that he does not have the Hand of Darkness with him. How would you come by such knowledge? The Aeldari are not the only warriors capable of treading the paths of fate, nor are your rangers and harlequins alone in their daring of the Eye of Terror. There are those who serve the Emperor who have far longer experience of that stronghold of chaos than any other mortal being. Of course, Primarch Guilliman, it was not doubt being voiced. My librarians have prepared. I would not know how to name such a thing, a guide, a vision, a map. They assure me that none of these terms are accurate. Ugh. The Imperial tongue is severely deficient for such discussions, that is certain. Your perspectives and tenses are so narrow, one wonders how you cope at all with the grandeur and size of the universe. Do not forget that we fight a common foe. It was for reasons such as this that we brought you back, Lord Guilliman, so we may overcome our differences, deep as they are, and fight chaos together. Apologies if I offended. Primarch Guilliman, please instruct your librarians to share this information, and we shall attempt our best to decode it. It shall be done. I wish you speed and safe journeys on this mission. If you can rob our foes of this weapon, it will be a severe blow against their future plans. The Imperium is in peril, and the Eldar may have returned the Emperor's son to us, but let us not forget that it was quite a mixed reaction from Big E. I think I see why the Emperor called Guilliman a traitor, as well as the only remaining salvation. Guilliman has allowed himself to become compromised by the xenos, and he's becoming increasingly aware of it, sure, but it is all at a point where it has spiraled out of control. Guilliman was smart to try to make new allies, but sometimes smart is not the same thing as wise, and he was quite unwise to do so, and it is the entirety of humanity that will have to pay the price for his Primarch-level mistake. Trust not the xenos. Seems simple. Guilliman should have known that. He openly stated he didn't trust them while showing them more and more trust. That's what alien witchcraft will do, though. It's for this reason that I contend the Aeldari are the greatest threat to humanity in the galaxy. They alone have worked their way in and received a seat at Guilliman's table, and they alone have the Imperial Lord Regent believing their visions of the future are showing the path that he must follow to lead mankind through the grim darkness without meeting our extinction.